The Enemy's Counterfeit 144,000 Teaching, Part 1 of 2. Prayer thought for our study. The enemy will try everything conceivable to confuse, becloud, and cover up the truth, especially on the subject of the 144,000. White House Recruiter, page 33. Before we begin this study, we'd ask that you kneel and pray, claim the promise of John 16:13, and he shall be faithful and guide us into all truth. Let us begin. Let's look at some of the enemy's past beclouding. That's the Sabbath Sunday worship. We all know very well that he has tried to substitute a false day of worship, Sunday, for the true day of worship, Sabbath. And again, we have the marriage covenant, which he has substituted and has changed in many parts of the world. The recognized biblical man and wife marriage, and now it is different parties, man and man, woman and women, and so forth, to be acceptable as a marriage covenant. And then the third one, the rainbow covenant. We know that he's always put the rainbow in the skies to remind us that he would no longer flood the earth. And that rainbow has now been put on flags to symbolize the alternative lifestyle against the Bible. And so this is some of the becloudings the enemy has given us. And so we're going to look at today's issue of beclouding the 144,000 truth. We want to see what this beclouding and confusion really is, so that the honest present truth believer can make a fair judgment on what the enemy is up to in this regard. Study to show thyself approved unto God, a workman that needeth not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. 2 Timothy 2:15. The only ones that will endure to the end will be those who carefully watch their steps from being carried away either by his additions to or his subtractions from the works of inspiration. 2TG number 46, page 43 to 44. Is the subject of the 144,000 salvational? Its dominant doctrinal concern being the truth of the 144,000 and a correct understanding of it being a life and death matter to all. The rod unfolds it from different angles. Shepherd's Rod Track, page 5. It is more ignorant of who and what are the 144,000 than it is perhaps of any other known Bible truth. And what is still sadder, many of its teachers are refusing to accept this most startling revelation. Testimonies to Ministers, page 445, are now insisting a knowledge of the subject is not essential to their soul salvation. Track 5, page 104. So here we see, brethren, that the subject of the 144,000 is a life and death matter. So we cannot afford to misunderstand this subject. We have to understand it clearly, we have to teach it clearly, and we have to know how we stand on it clearly. We can't be wallowing around and saying, well, I'm not really sure about it. I don't think it's that important. No, we are told it's a life and death matter. How shall we come to a conclusion of our issue? Well, we have our answers. Those who desire to doubt will have plenty of room. God does not propose to remove all occasion for unbelief. He gives candid evidence, which must be carefully investigated with a humble mind and teachable spirit, and all should decide from the weight of evidence. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 675. The weight of evidence is the only fair and final criterion worthy of a Christian who must ever make an investigation for himself concerning purported truth. One Answer, page 77. We're going to go ahead and do this study, and we're going to decide on the weight of evidence. After we've seen all the evidence, we're going to make a decision. That's what we are told to do. All right, so what is the weight of evidence? Well, we have three points here. The amount of references supporting one side over the other. In other words, the preponderance. Number two, the clarity of a statement versus a statement that is ambiguous, possibly different interpretations. Number 3, a chart, which is basically the symbols, which can't be misconstrued. So we have 3 areas that we're going to try to understand this weight of evidence. All right, we shall try to answer the following questions with the weight of evidence. Number 1, how many references point to only 144,000 being sealed? And that's from the church. Number 2, how many point to more than 144,000 being sealed? Number 3, are there more weightful references than others? Number 4, what proof do the charts provide? Number 5, is there an eyewitness as to where the those with issue began? Number 6, does the progress of time, the unrolling of the scroll, influence our understanding? Number 7, from an escape reference angle, do we see any specific number given or a different number than 144,000? So these are our 7 basic questions that we will try to answer in this study and give us some solid information to base our decision. All right, number 1 question. How many references point to only 144,000 being sealed? Well, we'll look at the Shepherd's Rod volumes, that's volume 1 and 2, and we find 10 references that support only 144,000 being sealed. Now, please make note of these, and you can go back at your leisure and look at each one of these references. But we have looked them over very carefully, and each one purports to show only 144,000 are to be sealed from the church. Okay, how many references showing more than 144,000 being sealed from the church at Ezekiel 9? 0. Okay, so if you go through the 2 volumes, volume 1 and volume 2, you won't find any reference that suggests a number other than 144,000 sealed from the SDA church. Now, you will find one that is possibly used in this way, but let's look at that. This experience of the Israelites in departing from Egypt was written for the instruction of those who should live in the last days, before the overflowing scourge shall come upon the dwellers of the earth. The Lord calls upon all who are Israelites indeed to prepare for that event. Volume 6, page 195. The 12 tribes of Israel after the flesh are but a type of Israel by promise, the 144,000. As there were Gentiles among Israel, the type, there would be Gentiles in Israel, the true. Shepherd's Rod, volume 1, page 64. Note, we see that Gentiles will go with the 144,000. However, that is upon departing. When is that? After Passover, Ezekiel 9. Gentiles will indeed go with them after the purification, just as in the type. So we can't misconstrue this statement. It's showing that, yes, Gentiles will join them and go with them, but that is only after the Passover. The antitypical Passover, as we know, is Ezekiel 9. So we cannot confuse that there will be Gentiles going, surviving the purification from the church and going with them into the kingdom. That's not what it's saying. So let's make sure we understand this reference. All right, so let's go to tracks. On the tracks, we will find 7, and that's found in the following. Track 8, page 20-21. Track 3, page 82. Track 9, 54 and 55. Track 5, page 103. Again, 113 to 114. Leviticus track, page 103. And then the other 2, which may be interpreted as more than 144,000, are White House Recruiter, page 46, and track 9, page 56. But let's take a look at those 2 references. White House Recruiter, page 46. But if you make your decision for the better, then you will receive God's mark, Ezekiel 9. Testimonies and Ministers, page 445, in your foreheads. Be accounted faultless before his judgment throne, and be privileged to either come up in the resurrection of Daniel 12:2 or stand aforehand with the Lamb on Mount Zion, Revelation 14:1. Thence to carry God's message to all nations and bring all your brethren for an offering to the house of the Lord, Isaiah 66:19 and 20. You will become part of the first fruits, the nucleus of the kingdom church, the token of the second fruits of the living, of those who you subsequently bring in. As present truth adherents in the first fruit period, may God help us all, brother or sister, to be either among or along with the first fruits, the 144,000. It is left to everyone to determine his own destiny. Note two groups, Daniel 12:2, resurrected saints, and those that stand with the Lamb on Mount Zion, 144,000. So when we take this reference in context, we see in the first paragraph that he identifies the two groups. It's easy to see that, Daniel 12:2 and the 144,000. Therefore, we can understand when he says to be either among, which is 144,000, or along with, which is Daniel, the resurrection of Daniel 12:2, the first fruits, the 144,000. So this reference really is very clear to us once we take it in context. To gather a class defiled with women, a second fruits. This class of saints must be those who have at one time been married to some unchristian mistress, a heathen church, and who consequently are not descendants of either Jacob or the Christian church. So there are to be two harvests, one from the church and one from the world. The record of the former mentions only Israelites, 144,000, those not defiled with women, though it does not say that there may not be others. While the record of the latter, however, definitely embraces a great multitude from all nations, which must necessarily be both undefiled and defiled ones, Jews and Gentiles. Tract 9, page 56. Note, two harvests, one from the church and one from the world. Although the church produces those not defiled with women, the first harvest may contain others from outside that may not be defiled with women. Let us show an example of this outsider who may not be defiled but gathered in the first fruit harvest. Question 93. Although I am not a member of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, yet I have the light on Ezekiel 9 and on the truth of the 144,000. Will I fall in the slaughter of the wicked if I do not fully accept and live up to the light? And conversely, will I be subject to the enjoyment of the privileges of the 144,000 and be one of them if I obey all the light of this message? Answer. Even though you are not a member of the church, you still will be held accountable for the light which you have on the subject, for no one finds the truth accidentally or sees it without the Holy Spirit's aid. By the same law of accountability or sacred responsibility, even though you may have come into the message only very recently, you can be eligible for the election of the 144,000 if you live up to the message, that is to purify and seal them. Whether or not for a certainty, however, you will be one of them, we do not know. But if you are faithful to the message, you will at least be one with them. For answer, page 35 and 36. So our note is this reference is not talking of from within the SDA church, but from without. So we see on that prior reference that, yes, there may be some that will go along with the 144,000 in that first fruit harvest, but they're not from the SDA church. They're from the outside, other churches, and they have not been defiled according to this reference, or the last one as well. All right, so let's get to the symbolic codes, which we find 5 references. One symbolic code number 9, page 8. One symbolic code number 1112, page 2 and 9. 5 symbolic codes, 612, page 8. 7 symbolic codes, 712, page 9. Now, those are the 5 that you will find in the codes. Keep in mind now, brethren, that we're not perfect. We may have missed 1 or 2 along the way here, but this is the pretty detailed study that we've taken up, and we advise or encourage you to do the same. If you find something that we missed, please let us know. But we've done, like I said, a very detailed study here. The may be interpreted as more than 144,000. We found one quote, and that's 2 symbolic code number 58, page 8. So let's look at that one. all that are found members of the church up to the fulfillment of Ezekiel 9 will either receive the seal and be part of or with the 144,000, or else be left without the seal and fall under the slaughter weapons of the 5 men. 2 Symbolic Code number 56, page 8. Now notice the date, 1937. Now, why we say you cannot use this is because later on in the message, look at 3 Answer, page 26, and that was written in 1943. So 6 years later, the prophet says a startling, powerful, weightful quote, notwithstanding the fact that in the closing work for the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, only 144,000 are to be sealed, according to Testimonies, Volume 3, page 266. So we see that it's not the rod saying that the spirit prophecy says it's a fact. It's the rod saying it's a fact. So this is very, very powerful. And this alone would have to cancel out the 1937 understanding if one was to believe it to be evidence that there's going to be more than 144,000 sealed from the church. You can't have that once you know the 1943 quote, because it says it's a fact in the closing work for the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. Let's also make another point here. The teaching that, it's just the Israelites that are going to be sealed. There's going to be Gentiles that are going to be sealed as well. Well, is that what this reference says? For the Seventh-day Adventist denomination. Okay, it makes a sweeping, all-encompassing statement here. It doesn't say for the Israelites in the Seventh-day Adventist denomination, which is what they're trying to put over. It says for the whole Seventh-day Adventist denomination. Very powerful quote. And we'll get back to that when we go for the answer quotes. All right, we've learned that later in 1951, again, a later date, in White House Recruiter, page 46, they made clear that those that are with them are the resurrected of Daniel 12:2. So we've already learned from the White House Recruiter that the rod identifies those with, and that is those to be resurrected, Daniel 12:2. We also learned just a previous quote here that it could be outsiders of the church that will go with them. So we have 2 classes here, 2 understandings, and this is what the rod really identifies as those with. It's the resurrected saints of Daniel 12:2 and possibly some outsiders from other churches as well.